Ladies and gentlemen, friends, brothers and sisters, tonight I have a message for you. A message of hope, a message of faith, a message of unshakable, undeniable, and unstoppable promises. Because I know something, too many of you have been let down by broken promises. Maybe a friend betrayed you. Maybe a family member walked away. Maybe life itself has thrown you down over and over again. But I came here to tell you tonight, there is one who never breaks a promise. There is one whose words will never fail. There's one who says, I am faithful and I will do it. A promise is a declaration of commitment, a word spoken with the power to change lives, move mountains, and shape destinies. But a promise is only as strong as the one who makes it. In this world, we've all seen promises that were made and broken in the same breath. We've watched leaders rise with grand words and fall with empty actions. We've trusted people who swore they'd stand by us, only to find ourselves alone when we needed them most. Maybe you've been there. Maybe someone told you they would love you forever, but they walked away. Maybe a friend said they would stand with you through thick and thin, but when the storms came, they were nowhere to be found. Maybe you were promised success, promotion, or recognition, but when the time came, someone else took what you had been working for. And after enough broken promises, something happens inside of us. We stop believing. We stop trusting. We build walls around our hearts because the pain of another disappointment is just too much. But listen to me. There is one whose promises never fail. There is one whose word is more powerful than any obstacle, more unshakable than any circumstance, more reliable than the ground you stand on. When he speaks, the universe listens. When he commands, the winds and the waves obey. When he makes a promise, it is already as good as done. Think about it. When a man makes a promise, it comes with limitations. A father can promise to protect his children, but what if circumstances change? A business can promise you job security, but what if the economy collapses? A doctor can promise you healing, but what if science has no answer for your condition? But when God makes a promise, there is no uncertainty. There is no what if. There is no plan B. If he says, I will never leave you nor forsake you, then you can walk through the valley of the shadow of death and know that you are not alone. If he says, I will supply all your needs, then it doesn't matter what the bank account says. He is your provider. If he says, by my stripes you are healed, then sickness does not have the final say over your life. If he says, I have a future for you, a hope for you, a plan for you, then no failure, no mistake, no past sin can cancel what he has spoken. Do you understand the weight of this? When God makes a promise, it's not just words, it's a declaration backed by all of heaven. The same God who spoke the universe into existence with a word is the same God who speaks over your life. Let me ask you something. Have you ever made a promise to a child? Have you seen their eyes light up with excitement, their hearts full of expectation, simply because you said, I promise? A father tells his little girl, I promise to take you to the park this weekend, and she doesn't doubt it for a second. She doesn't sit around wondering, will he really do it? No, she believes because she trusts her father's word. But what happens when that's let down, so you've started doubting, you've faced disappointment, so you've lowered your expectations, you've stopped dreaming, because dreams never seem to come true. But I came here to tell you, it's time to believe again. It's time to shake off the doubt, to silence the voice of disappointment, and to step into the unshakable, undeniable, unstoppable promises of God. Because unlike the promises of this world, his word cannot return void. Unlike the words of man, his word is eternal, unbreakable, and unchangeable. Let me ask you, when you place an order at a restaurant, do you doubt that your food is coming? Do you sit there questioning if the chef is really making it? No, you wait with expectation. You trust that what you ask for is on its way. When you order something online, do you panic every second before it arrives? No, you wait for that package because you know it's been sent. You don't see it yet, but you believe it's coming. And yet when it comes to God's promises, we hesitate, we pray, and then we worry. We believe, and then we doubt. But let me remind you, when you pray in faith, it's like placing an order in the heavenly realm. The moment you release that prayer, the answer is already on its way. Just because you don't see it yet doesn't mean it's not coming. Just because you don't hear anything Doesn't mean God isn't working behind the scenes. How many of you have ever planted a seed? Do you stare at the ground every day and say, where is it? Where's my tree? Why isn't anything happening? No, you trust that beneath the soil something is happening. You may not see it with your eyes, but the process has begun. Some of you need to start trusting that your seed is growing, your miracle is in motion, your breakthrough is breaking through. Just because you don't see the promise fulfilled yet doesn't mean it's not on its way. When Noah built the ark, he had never seen rain before, but God said, it will rain, and that was enough. So he built. People laughed, people mocked, but he trusted the promise. And one day the rain came. When Abraham was told he would have a son, he was already an old man. His wife laughed at the idea, but God had spoken it, and that was enough. Years passed, it looked impossible, but one day the promise came to pass. When Jesus told Peter to step out of the boat and walk on water, Peter didn't ask for proof first. And he didn't say, Lord, show me the path beneath the waves. No, he just stepped, because the promise was enough. And that's what I want to tell you tonight. When God makes a promise, don't wait for proof. Just step. Step into his faithfulness. Step into his provision. Step into his healing. Step into his plan for your life, because if he said it, it will happen. People make promises every day. Some with good intentions, some with selfish motives, and some with no real intention of keeping them at all. A father tells his son, I'll be at your game, I promise. But then work calls, and suddenly that promise is broken. A couple stands at an altar looking into each other's eyes, saying, I promise to love you forever. But months or years later, those words turn to dust. A politician stands before a crowd declaring, I will bring change. I will make things better. But when the time comes to act, excuses replace action, and disappointment replaces hope. We live in a world filled with empty promises. People say one thing and do another. They promise loyalty but disappear when things get hard. They promise success but leave you stranded when the road gets rough. They promise happiness but deliver heartbreak. And after being let down enough times, we start building walls around our hearts. We stop believing in promises. We stop trusting words. Maybe you felt that before. Maybe someone you loved walked away. Maybe a friend who swore to stand with you turned their back. Maybe life itself has left you feeling betrayed, like every promise ever made to you was just another lie waiting to be exposed. But hear me now. God's promises are not like man's promises. When he speaks, it is not wishful thinking. When he declares something, it is not a temporary statement. When he says he will do something, you can take it as absolute truth. Let me ask you, how many times has a company promised you a lifetime warranty only to find out there was fine print that took it away? How many times has someone said, I'll always be there, but when you really needed them, they were nowhere to be found? How many times has life itself dangled hope in front of you only to snatch it away at the last second? But when God makes a promise, there is no fine print. There is no expiration date. There are no conditions that he will suddenly change. He is not a man that he should lie. He does not change his mind like shifting shadows. His word is final, unshakable, and eternal. If he says he will provide, then no economy, no job loss, no financial crisis can stop him. If he says he will heal, then no sickness, no diagnosis, no doctor's report can override his power. If he says he will restore, then no broken relationship, no past mistake, no regret is beyond his ability to redeem. Have you ever noticed how quickly people forget their promises when circumstances change? A friend promises, call me anytime, I'm always here, but then you call at the wrong time, and suddenly they don't answer. A boss promises a promotion, but when profits fall, that promise is forgotten. A spouse promises commitment, but when temptation comes, the promise is abandoned. But God is not swayed by circumstances. He does not say one thing today and another thing tomorrow. If he has spoken a promise over your life, then nothing, no person, no circumstance, no attack from the enemy can take it away. The only thing that can stop you from seeing it come to pass is if you stop believing in it. Think about this. If you deposit a check from a billionaire, you don't worry if it will bounce. You don't call the bank 100 times to make sure the money is real. You trust it because you know the one who signed it has enough to back it up. Now tell me this, if we can trust a piece of paper with ink on it, why do we struggle to trust the creator of the universe? If we can believe in a paycheck coming at the end of the month, why do we doubt the one who owns the cattle on 1,000 hills? If we can put faith in an airline to get us to our destination safely, why do we hesitate to trust the one who holds the stars in place? Some of you have been living in fear because you put more trust in the words of men than in the promises of God. Some of you have been hesitant to step into your calling because you've been let down before, and you're afraid of being let down again. Some of you have been so hurt by the broken promises of this world that you've stopped believing in the unbreakable promises of heaven, but I came to tell you tonight, God's word is stronger than any lie, his promises are bigger than any fear, and his faithfulness is greater than any disappointment you've ever faced. When he told Noah to build the ark, people laughed, they mocked him, they told him he was crazy, but the promise of God was greater than their doubt, and one day the rain came, and Noah stood in the fulfillment of the promise. When he told Sarah she would have a son, she laughed because it seemed impossible. She was old, her body was past the point of bearing children, but God's promise was greater than her circumstances. And one day she held that promise in her arms. When he told the Israelites that he would take them to the promised land, they faced opposition, trials, and challenges along the way. But not one of God's promises failed. Every word he spoke came to pass. And the same God who kept his promises to Noah, to Sarah, to Moses, to David, to Peter, to Paul, is the same God who will keep his promises to you. The world will try to convince you otherwise. The enemy will whisper doubts into your ear. People will tell you to be realistic, to lower your expectations, to prepare for disappointment. But let me tell you, faith is not about being realistic. Faith is about believing that when God says it, it is done. Maybe you're in a situation right now where you feel forgotten. Maybe you've been waiting on a promise for years and you're starting to wonder if it will ever happen. Maybe everything in your life looks the opposite of what God has promised you. But hear me, delay does not mean denial. Just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it's not coming. Just because the road is hard doesn't mean the promise isn't real. Just because the storm is raging doesn't mean the destination has changed. If he promised to bless you, then no curse, no opposition, no setback can stop it. If he promised to open doors, then no man, no rejection, no failure can lock them shut. If he promised to fight for you, then no weapon formed against you will prosper. Man may fail you, the world may disappoint you, but God's promise stands forever. Faith is not just believing that God exists. Faith is trusting that what he has promised will come to pass, even when everything around you screams the opposite. Faith is stepping out when you don't see the road. Faith is holding on when everything tells you to let go. Faith is when situation looks impossible, when time seems to be running out. And that is where most people struggle. That is where doubt creeps in. Imagine a farmer planting seeds in the ground. He covers them with soil, waters them, and walks away. And he doesn't stand there every day yelling at the ground, "Where is my harvest?" He doesn't dig up the seed after 2 days because he doesn't see progress. No, he trusts that the process is happening even when he can't see it. Some of you have planted seeds of faith, prayers, dreams, hopes, and now you're standing there staring at the ground, wondering why nothing is happening. You're doubting, questioning, worrying, but just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not growing. Just because the answer hasn't arrived doesn't mean it's not on its way. Think about a package you order online. The moment you place the order, you get a confirmation. You don't panic every 5 minutes calling the company to check if they really sent it. No, you wait for it because you know it's coming. Yet when it comes to God's promises, we doubt. We ask God, did you really hear me? Are you really working? Did you really send the answer? But faith means trusting that the moment you prayed, the answer was sent. The moment you stepped out, God started moving. The moment you believed, the promise was set in motion. Abraham had a promise. He would be the father of many nations. But God gave him that promise when he was an old man, and years passed with no child in sight. Imagine the whispers of doubt, the stares of people, the thoughts that must have come. Maybe I heard God wrong. Maybe he changed his mind. Maybe this isn't for me. But God does not operate on our timelines. He doesn't rush because we are impatient. He doesn't forget because we are anxious. When he makes a promise, he finishes what he started. And at the appointed time, Abraham held his son in his arm. The promise fulfilled. But what if he had given up too soon? What if he had said, this has taken too long, I quit? How many people stop believing right before the promise is about to arrive? How many people walk away from their destiny because they got tired of waiting? If Noah had stopped building the ark because he got tired of people laughing, he would have drowned in the flood. If Joseph had given up in the prison, he would have never reached the palace. If Peter had let fear stop him, he would have never walked on water. Faith means stepping forward even when you don't see the outcome. Think about a tightrope walker. When he steps onto the rope, he doesn't see a net beneath him. He doesn't see a safety harness. He only sees the thin rope stretched before him. But he takes the step anyway, trusting that as he moves, he will find his balance. Some of you are waiting for guarantees. You want to see every step before you move. You want a contract signed by God saying this will work out exactly as you expect. But faith doesn't work that way. Faith means stepping even when you don't have all the answers. Faith means trusting that even if you don't see the full picture, God is already painting the masterpiece. When the Israelites stood before the Red Sea, the waters were still. There was no sign of a miracle. Pharaoh's army was behind them, and it looked like the promise of freedom was about to end in failure. But God told Moses, stretch out your staff, not wait until the waters part and then move, not stand still and see what happens. No, he told them to act in faith. And when Moses stretched out his staff, then the sea parted, then the way was made, then the promise became reality. Some of you are waiting for the waters to part before you move, but God is waiting for you to take the first step. Some of you are asking for proof, but God is asking for faith. Some of you are standing at the edge of your promise, but fear is whispering, what if it doesn't happen? And I tell you, what if it does? What if the door you are afraid to walk through is the very door God has opened for your destiny? What if the thing you're scared to believe in is the very thing God wants to bring to pass? What if the promise you're doubting is already on its way, but you're too focused on fear to see it? Faith is trusting before you see it. Faith is believing before it happens. Faith is holding on to the promise even when the evidence isn't there. A child standing on the edge of a swimming pool, about to jump into his father's arms, doesn't hesitate. He doesn't analyze whether his father will catch him. He doesn't calculate the risk. He just jumps because he knows his father is trustworthy. So why do we hesitate when God tells us to jump? Why do we doubt when he has never failed us? Why do we hold back when his arms are already stretched out to catch us? Fear will tell you to stay where you are. Doubt will tell you to lower your expectation. The enemy will whisper, did God really say that? But faith silences every lie. Faith stands on the promise and refuses to move. Faith says, I may not see it yet, but I know it's coming. And when you trust the promise, even before it happens, you unlock miracles, you unlock breakthroughs, you unlock the fullness of what God has for you, because faith is not just believing, faith is trusting. Doubt is the weapon the enemy uses to paralyze you. Doubt is the whisper in your ear telling you that the promise isn't real. Doubt is the shadow lurking in your mind, making you question everything God has ever said. If the enemy can get you to doubt, he can get you to stop believing. And if he can get you to stop believing, he can make you walk away from what was already yours. Look at the very first deception in history in the garden when the serpent came to Eve. He didn't use force. He didn't use threats. He didn't even tell her outright to disobey God. No, he used a question. Did God really say that? That was enough. That seed of doubt was all it took to make her question what she already knew to be true. And that is how the enemy operates. He won't come to you shouting, "Give up, stop trusting God." No, he comes quietly, subtly, planting thoughts like, "Are you sure God really promised you that? Maybe you misunderstood. If the promise was real, wouldn't it have happened by now? Maybe you're believing for something that was never meant for you." He plants these thoughts, and if you let them take root, they begin to grow. And before you know it, you start second-guessing everything. You start doubting what you once knew deep in your soul. Doubt is like a slow poison. It doesn't kill instantly, but it weakens you over time. It makes you hesitate. It makes you question. It makes you delay stepping into the promise God has already set before you. Imagine a man standing before a door that God has opened. The promise is right there. His breakthrough, his destiny, his answered prayer. But instead of walking through it, he hesitates. He overthinks. He wonders, what if this isn't really from God? What if I fail? What if I get hurt? What if I'm wrong? And while he stands there in doubt, the opportunity passes. The enemy didn't need to take the promise away. He only needed to make the man doubt enough to never step into it. How many people have missed their calling because they hesitated too long? How many people have turned back because doubt made them think they weren't good enough? How many people have settled for less because they believed the lie that they weren't worthy of more? The enemy knows he can't take away what God has given you, so instead he tries to convince you to give it up yourself. Think about Peter when he walked on water. As long as he kept his eyes on Jesus, he was doing the impossible. He was walking in the miraculous. But the moment he looked at the storm, doubt crept in, the wind, the waves, the fear, all of it distracted him from the truth that Jesus had already given him the power to stand. And the second he doubted, he began to sink. Doubt will sink you every time. Doubt will pull you under. Doubt will make you forget what you already knew. Some of you have been walking in faith, trusting the promise, stepping forward. But suddenly the wind picked up, the waves got higher, the obstacles became greater, and now doubt is whispering, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I can't do this. Maybe I should just go back. But hear me. If the enemy is working this hard to make you doubt, it's because you are closer to the promise than you think. Have you ever noticed that doubt doesn't attack people who aren't going anywhere? It doesn't attack those who have already given up. It doesn't attack those who are standing still. No, doubt comes after those who are on the verge of breakthrough. The enemy is terrified of what will happen if you actually believe. He is terrified of what will happen if you refuse to let go of God's promise. He knows that if you stand firm, if you don't waver, if you don't give in, then nothing can stop you. Doubt will try to convince you that your past disqualifies you. Doubt will tell you that you're not strong enough, not smart enough, not worthy enough. Doubt will scream that it's too late, that the opportunity has passed, that you missed your chance. But listen to me. God's promise is not based on your strength. It is based on His. It is not based on your past. It is based on His grace. It is not based on your ability. It is based on His power. When David stood before Goliath, the enemy tried to make him doubt. The soldiers laughed at him. The king told him he was too young. Goliath mocked him. But David didn't listen to the voices of doubt. He stood on what he knew, that God was with him. And with one stone, he took down the giant. Some of you are standing before your own Goliath right now. The voices of doubt are getting louder. The enemy is trying to shake your faith. But like David, you need to stand on what you know. Not what you feel, not what the circumstances say, not what the world tells you, what you know. You know God has never failed you. You know His promises are true. You know that He is faithful, so why would He fail you now? Why would He lead you this far just to abandon you? Why would He give you a promise if He wasn't planning to fulfill it? Doubt is a thief. It will steal your peace. It will steal your confidence. It will steal your destiny if you let it. But you have a choice. You can listen to the lies, or you can stand on the truth. You can waver, or you can hold firm. You can let doubt sink you, or you can fix your eyes on Jesus and walk on water. Because the enemy can whisper all the lies he wants, but he can't change the truth. And the truth is, God's promise still stands. We live in a world that demands instant results. We want everything now. We want prayers answered immediately, dreams fulfilled overnight, and breakthroughs to come without delay. We live in an age of fast food, instant messaging, and same-day delivery, and when things take longer than we expect, frustration sets in. Doubt creeps in. We start questioning God's plan. But here's what we forget. God is not bound by our clock. He is not pressured by our deadlines. He does not rush just because we are impatient. His timing is not only different from ours, it is perfect. Think about the sun. It rises at the exact right time every single day. It never rushes, it never delays, it never fails. You may not always see it. There may be clouds, there may be storms, but the sun is still there, rising at its appointed time. That is how God's timing works. Just because you don't see movement doesn't mean the plan isn't unfolding. Just because you don't see results yet doesn't mean the answer isn't on the way. Look at a baby growing in the womb. No mother expects to conceive a child today and give birth tomorrow. She knows that there is a process. There is a waiting period. The baby needs time to develop, time to grow strong, time to be fully ready for the world. And if the baby comes too soon, there can be complications. It's the same with God's promises. If he gave it to you too soon, you wouldn't be ready for it. If he opened the door before the right time, you might not be strong enough to handle what's on the other side. God's delays are not his denials. They are his preparations. Think about Joseph. He had a dream as a young man that he would be a great leader. But instead of stepping into his destiny right away, he was sold into slavery, falsely accused, thrown into prison. Years passed, and it seemed like the dream had died. But in reality, God was preparing him. He was shaping him, refining him, teaching him how to lead, how to endure, how to trust. And when the time was right, not too soon, not too late, Joseph stepped into his promise. Imagine if Joseph had been made a leader the moment he had the dream. He wasn't ready yet. He hadn't been tested. He hadn't been refined. But by the time he stood before Pharaoh, he had the wisdom, the strength, and the character to handle the position. Some of you are wondering why your breakthrough hasn't come yet. You're frustrated, questioning, asking God, why is this taking so long? But what if the delay is actually a setup? What if God is working behind the scenes, aligning everything in the perfect way, not just so you receive the promise, but so you can keep it when it comes? A butterfly doesn't fight its way out of the cocoon in one day. A seed doesn't turn into a tree overnight. The most beautiful masterpieces take time to create. And when it comes to your life, God is not rushing because he is crafting something greater than you can imagine. Think about a puzzle. When you dump the pieces on the table, it looks like chaos. It doesn't make sense. You try to force pieces together, but they don't fit. But as time goes on, as piece by piece falls into place, the full picture starts to appear. And then one day you step back and realize this is what God was doing all along. Some of you are holding a single piece of the puzzle right now. You don't understand it. It doesn't seem to fit, but God sees the full picture. He knows how every moment, every delay, every detour is actually part of the masterpiece he is creating in your life. Think about Lazarus. When Jesus got word that Lazarus was sick, he didn't with their own hands, and it led to unnecessary pain. But when the time was right, when the season was perfect, Isaac was born. God's timing is not random. It is strategic. He is setting things in place, moving things into alignment, orchestrating the perfect moment. Not just so you receive the promise, but so the promise arrives at the moment it will have the greatest impact. If a plane takes off before the runway is clear, it can crash. If you pull a cake out of the oven before it's done baking, it will collapse. If you break open a cocoon too soon, the butterfly, some of you are in the waiting season. and you're struggling because you don't see movement. But just because you don't see it doesn't mean nothing is happening. The roots of a tree grow deep before the branches grow tall. The foundation of a building is laid before the walls rise. You may feel like nothing is happening, but God is working beneath the surface. He is strengthening your roots. He is deepening your foundation. Because when the time comes, you won't just receive the promise, you will be ready to carry it. God is never in a hurry, but He is never late. You may not understand the timing right now, but one day you will look back and realize it was perfect all along. Fear is the greatest thief of destiny. It will rob you of your purpose. It will paralyze your faith. It will make you hesitate when you should be moving forward. Fear will keep you standing outside the promise, looking in, wishing, hoping, but never stepping in. And that is exactly what the enemy wants. The enemy doesn't have the power to take away what God has promised you. He can't erase your calling. He can't cancel God's plan. So instead, he tries to make you so afraid that you never claim what is already yours. Think about the Israelites. God promised them the land of Canaan. It was theirs. It had already been spoken. It had already been set aside. But when they arrived, fear overtook them. They saw giants. They saw obstacles. They saw the challenges ahead. And instead of stepping forward, they stepped back. They let fear outweigh the promise. And because of that, they wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. Not because God changed His mind, not because the promise was taken away, but because they were too afraid to step into what was already theirs. How many of us are standing on the edge of our breakthrough, but we hesitate because of fear? Fear says, what if I fail? Fear says, what if I'm not good enough? Fear says, what if I get hurt? Fear says, what if I step out and everything falls apart? But what if God is saying, what if you step out and everything falls into place? The enemy uses fear to control you. He whispers lies in your ear to make you doubt. He magnifies your weaknesses. He reminds you of your past failures. He keeps you looking at the size of the problem instead of the size of your God. But here's what you need to know. Fear is a liar. Fear is the shadow that grows larger when you shine the light on it. It has no real power except the power you give it. It will scream, it will intimidate, it will try to shake you, but the moment you step forward in faith, fear loses its grip. Look at Peter. When he saw Jesus walking on water, he stepped out of the boat. He did the impossible. He walked on the waves. But the moment he took his eyes off Jesus and focused on the wind, fear took over. He started sinking, not because the water changed, not because the storm got worse, but because fear stole his focus. Fear will always make the problem look bigger than it is. Fear made the Israelites see themselves as grasshoppers, even though God had already given them victory. Fear made Gideon hide in a winepress, even though God had called him a mighty warrior. Fear made Moses say, I'm not a good speaker, even though God had already chosen him to lead a nation. Fear makes you look at what you lack instead of looking at the power of the one who called you. But hear me, you were not created to walk in fear, you were created to walk in the promise. When God gives you a promise, it is not your job to figure out how it will happen. It is not your job to analyze every obstacle. It is not your job to calculate the risks. It is your job to believe and step forward. Faith is not the absence of fear. It is the refusal to let fear stop you. Fear will always be there. The enemy will always try to plant doubt. The challenges will always look bigger than your strength. But the good news is, you're not walking in your strength. You're walking in His. When a child learns to walk, they stumble, they fall. But do they stop trying? No, because they were created to walk. They don't sit down and say, I guess I'll just crawl for the rest of my life. No, they get up again and again until walking becomes second nature. That's how you have to be with faith. You may stumble, but don't stop. You may feel fear, but don't let it control you. You may not see the full picture yet, but keep walking. Because if you keep walking, the promise will meet you along the way. Fear wants you to stay in the boat. Fear wants you to stay stuck. Fear wants you to settle for less than what God has for you. But the promise is not in the boat. The promise is not in the wilderness. The promise is on the other side of fear. There are people who spend their entire lives letting fear dictate their steps. They stay in jobs they hate because they're afraid to step out. They stay in situations that drain them because they're afraid of the unknown. They never start the business, never write the book, never pursue the calling, because fear tells them, what if it doesn't work? But listen to me, what if it does? What if the very thing you've been afraid to do is the very thing that will lead you into your purpose? What if the breakthrough you've been waiting for is on the other side of the risk you're too afraid to take? What if the miracle isn't in the comfort zone, but in the step of faith you haven't taken yet? Fear wants to keep you locked in a prison of what-ifs. But faith says, even if I don't see the whole picture, I trust the one who holds it. When the Israelites finally stepped into the promised land, they realized something. The giants were never the real problem. Their fear was. The moment they stopped fearing and started believing, the walls of Jericho fell, the enemies fled, and they walked into everything God had for them. The promise has already been spoken. The victory has already been won. The door has already been opened. Now the question is, will you step in or will you let fear hold you back? There are many promises in this life. Promises of success, promises of wealth, promises of happiness. People chase after them, hoping that when they finally reach the top, they'll find what they've been looking for. But even when they achieve everything they ever dreamed of, something still feels missing. Because the greatest promise of all is not found in money, it's not found in fame, it's not found in earthly success. It's found in something far greater, something eternal, something unshakable. The greatest promise of all is the promise of salvation. The promise that no matter who you are, no matter what you've done, no matter how far you've fallen, grace is still reaching for you. People search their whole lives for something to fill the emptiness inside. They try relationships, careers, addictions, distractions, but nothing satisfies. Because that emptiness was never meant to be filled by temporary things. It was meant to be filled by God's greatest promise. And here is that promise. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. Think about those words. God didn't have to do it. He didn't have to reach down into a broken world. He didn't have to send his Son, but he did, not because we deserved it, not because we had earned it, but because his love was greater than our failure. Imagine a courtroom where you are on trial for every wrong thing you've ever done, every lie, every mistake, every moment of weakness. It's all laid out before you. The verdict is clear. Guilty. You know it. The judge knows it. The evidence is undeniable. But just as the sentence is about to be carried out, someone steps forward, someone who has done no wrong, someone who has never failed, someone who owes nothing, and they take your place. That is what Jesus did. That is what the greatest promise is all about. He took your place. He took your pain. He carried your burden so that you could walk free. And here's the most incredible part. This promise isn't for a select few. It's not for the perfect. It's not for those who have it all together. It's for whosoever believes. That means it's for the broken. It's for the weary. It's for the addict struggling to break free. It's for the one who feels like they've gone too far. It's for the one who thinks they're too lost to be found. It's for the one who's been searching for something real, something true, something that won't fade away. This promise is for you, and the best part, you don't have to earn it. You don't have to work for it. You don't have to prove yourself worthy of it. Because the greatest promise of all is not based on your ability. It's based on God's love. And his love never fails. Think about the thief on the cross. He had nothing left to offer, no good works to present, no time to make things right. He was at the end of his life, broken. But in his final moments, he turned to Jesus and said, Lord, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And what did Jesus say? Did he say, it's too late? Did he say, you haven't done enough? Did he say, you don't qualify? No, Jesus looked at him with love and said, today you will be with me in paradise. One moment of faith, one moment of surrender, one moment of believing the promise, and eternity was changed. And that same promise is extended to you today. You don't have to carry the weight of your past. You don't have to live in shame. You don't have to wonder if you're enough, because Jesus already paid the price. And when you accept that promise, everything changes. Suddenly fear loses its grip. Suddenly guilt has no power over you. Suddenly you realize you are loved beyond measure, chosen beyond doubt, redeemed beyond reason. This world is temporary. Every success, every achievement, every possession, it all fades. But the greatest promise of all, it lasts forever. When the storms of life come, this promise stands. When the world tries to shake you, this promise remains. When everything else crumbles, this promise holds firm. Because this isn't a promise made by man, this is a promise sealed in blood. A promise written not with ink, but with sacrifice. A promise that can never be broken. And today that promise is reaching out to you. The question is, will you take hold of it? Life is a journey filled with choices. Every day we stand at a crossroads between faith and fear, between doubt and belief, between holding back and stepping forward. And the truth is, you were not created to live in hesitation. You were not designed to stand on the sidelines watching life pass you by. You were made for more. The promises of God are not distant dreams meant for someone else. They are not reserved for the perfect, the strong, or the fearless. They are for you right here, right now. But promises are not just meant to be heard. They are meant to be walked in. Too many people go through life waiting for the right moment, waiting for a sign, waiting for the fear to disappear. But here's the secret. The right moment is now, because faith doesn't wait for the fear to leave. Faith moves forward in spite of fear. Remember this. Winners are not people who never fail. They are people who never quit. Michael Jordan missed more than 9,000 shots in his career, lost almost 300 games, and missed the game-winning shot 26 times, yet he is considered one of the greatest athletes of all time. Why? Because he never let failure define him. Thomas Edison failed thousands of times before he perfected the light bulb. When asked about it, he didn't say he failed. He said he simply found thousands of ways that didn't work. The greatest stories, the greatest victories, the greatest breakthroughs, they all belong to those who refuse to quit. You have a promise. You have a calling. You have a purpose that is bigger than your fears, stronger than your doubts, greater than your failures. But you have to believe it enough to walk in it. Think about an eagle. When a storm comes, other birds hide. They retreat. They seek shelter. They wait for it to pass. But not the eagle. The eagle spreads its wings and rises above the storm. That is who you are meant to be. Not someone who runs from challenges, but someone who rises above them. Not someone who settles for what is easy, but someone who fights for what is promised. And listen to me, there will be obstacles, there will be moments when you feel like giving up, moments when the promise seems too far, too impossible, too unreachable. But that is when you have to dig deep and remember why you started, because the only thing standing between you and your breakthrough is your willingness to keep moving forward. When you feel tired, keep going. When you feel unworthy, keep believing. When fear tries to paralyze you, push through, because there will come a moment when everything you've fought for, everything you've believed for, everything you refuse to give up on becomes reality. And in that moment you will look back and realize every tear, every trial, every struggle was worth it. So today, right now, decide that you will not be ruled by fear. Decide that you will not let doubt steal your destiny. Decide that you will not settle for anything less than the fullness of what has been promised to you. Because you are not just anyone. You are chosen. You are called. You are destined for greatness. And greatness does not wait for perfect conditions. Greatness does not shrink back. Greatness takes the first step. even when the path is unclear. So step forward, step into your purpose, step into your promise, and never, never, never look back.